Hello my dear students, it is I, Mirna Shar, your English teacher. In today's virtual class, we are going to review simple present tense. No need to buckle your seats because it's going to be a smooth ride. So get ready my lovelies. Before we start, I would like to drive your attention that we have three types of tenses: past tense, present tense, and future tense. Present tense is further divided into four parts: present simple, present continuous, present perfect, and present perfect continuous. But today our main concentration will be about present simple. Let us use the given examples in order to deduce the form of simple present tense. As an example on the affirmative sentence, Peter works every day. If I want to exchange Peter with a pronoun, it would be he works every day. So we have added as for the verb work. As another example, children like ice cream very much. Here, if I want to exchange the subject children with a pronoun which is they, it would be they like ice cream very much. In this case, we kept the verb as is, or in another word, basic form of the verb, without adding s, es, or ies. So as a conclusion, with the pronouns I, you, we, or they, we have to keep the verb as is, which is the basic form of the verb, like I drive, you drive, we drive, and they drive. As for the third person singular, he, she, and it, we have to add s, es, or ies for the verb. For example, he drives, she drives, and it drives. The second form of sentences is interrogative or question form. As an example, does he work as a doctor? Here, the sentence ended with a question mark, and as for the question word, we have used does with the subject he. And as you have noticed, for the verb work, we kept it as is, which is the basic form of the verb. As for the second example, do they watch TV together? Here we have added a question mark at the end of the sentence, just like the first example. But for the question word, we have used do instead of does for the subject they. Yet for the verb, we have kept it as is without adding es, s, or ies. Using the previous examples, we have deduced that we have to use do or does along with the base form of the verb in order to make questions. For example, do you drive or does she dance? Here we have to also add a question mark at the end of each sentence. So, for the interrogative sentences, we use do or does plus the subject along with the base form of the verb. For example, do you work? Do we work? Do they work? But on the other hand, does he or she work or does it work? We don't say does he or she works, and we don't say does it works. As for the final form of the sentences, it is
Can I have a cookie?
No.
Can I have a burger?
No.
Can I have a pizza?
No.
Can I have a shake?
No, 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 no.
Yep, guys, you've guessed it. It is the negative sentence. Let us read the given example in order to guess the form of the negative sentence. She doesn't work as a doctor, she works as a teacher. Here we have the third person she along with does not, which is the contraction of doesn't, and the base form of the verb work. As a conclusion, in order to form a negative sentence, we use with I, we, you, and they, do not, or the contraction form don't, along with the base form of the verb work, which means that we don't add s, es, or ies to the verb. Whereas for the third person, singular, he, she, and it, we use does not or contraction form doesn't, along with the base form of the verb. So we say work, but we don't say works. Now let us move to the usage part. First of all, we use the simple present tense in order to talk about things in general. For example, nurses look after the patients in the hospitals, or children like ice cream. The second usage is that we use it with repeated actions, habitual or maybe daily activities. For example, I usually go to my grandma every weekend, or Paul wakes up at 5 in the morning. The third usage is that when we talk about facts or opinion. For example, the earth goes around the sun, or she likes the color blue. Also, we use simple present tense in order to express a scheduled future action. For example, the term exams begin next week, or the school vacation starts in 2 weeks. Here, next week and 2 weeks show that they are scheduled future action. Also, we use it in order with time clause. For example, when students return to their houses, they must do their homework, or before Paul leaves his house, he must inform his mom. When and before show that they are related to time. Lastly, we use it with a non-progressive verb. By the word non-progressive, I mean that the verb that we are not allowed to add ing to them. At the beginning of the year, I have provided you with the table of the most common non-progressive verb. Please review it. As an example, listen, I hear a cry in the garden and she seems nice. I am not allowed to say she is seeming nice. I say instead she seems, simple present tense. Finally, it is good to know that we use present simple with adverbs of frequency, which means that when we say how often we do things. For example, in the summer, John usually plays tennis. Some adverb of frequency are never, sometimes, often, usually, or always. Finally, we are going to summarize all of the previous points. First of all, in the third person singular affirmative, the verb has a final s, es, or ies. For example, she goes to school. Here, with she, we added es for the verb go. We also formed the negative with don't or doesn't in the third person singular. They don't like sweets, or she doesn't live in Lebanon. Third, we formed questions with do and does for the third person singular. For example, does she eat sweets, or do you like football? Finally, you have to remember that most commonly we use the simple present tense in order to talk about regular repeated activities or situation. For example, Susan goes to school every day. Also, we use it in order to talk about facts or opinion. For example, Lebanon has 4 seasons.